Hello, this is Minder Chen from CSU Channel Island. In this business process reengineering lecture, I'm going to focus on process mapping or process modeling, which is a very important technique which we can use in business process reengineering, and we can also use it to help us to understand how to build information system better. Process modeling, sometimes referred to as process visualization or process mapping, is the use of process diagram to show how activity within the business process are connected to each other. It will help us to visualize the process and come up with idea how we may re-engineer an existing process, and also use the process diagram to show the newly designed process. And in a process, in a business process, we usually can show the sequencing amount activity within the business process, the data flow or the document that would be used, the decision point or the organization units that may be involved in a business process. Please remember, the business process model is just a tool that may help the engineering team to communicate with each other and with its customer. There are two types of business process model. One is what we call as-is model. The other is so-called to-be model. As-is model is about an existing process, and to-be model is the process that we're going to design. It's the new process that we're going to create. There are a variety of modeling techniques, including business process modeling notation called BPMN, IDEF0, the generic system flowcharting tool, or cross-functional flowcharting tool, which is equivalent of UML's activity diagram. UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. Let's just first look at a simple example, which we have different activity, which probably use different system application dealing with different backend database for order processing, inventory management, shipping, distribution, and account receivable. Conceptually, these four activities can be connected. The arrow here showing first the sequencing of this event or activity which will be performed. The data usually flow from one process to the other, at least logically. I'll explain this a little bit later. However, when a problem occurs, we want to, for instance, a customer called and say, hey, there's some error in my invoice, then we need to trace it sometime all the way back to the order processing activity to find out whether we entered the order incorrectly or we charged the customer with the wrong price. So this tends to be the logical workflow and data flow, and this a lot of time we need to trace back to the original activity in order to resolve a problem with the customer. And it is important that we will design a system which allow the frontline worker or process owner to have a single system view, to have an integrated view of the overall process, such that they can interact with the customer properly to help the customer understand the status of their order, of their inquiry. At the back end, it can be a single database or could be a multiple database using different and we may use different application or integrated ERP package, enterprise resource planning package. The important thing is that we need to integrate all those activities, all the activities here, with a single integrated viewpoint. Modeling a process, business process, data processing activity, workflow, is not an easy thing. There are different aspects of it. Let me use this similar example to illustrate the complexity. The solid arrow-headed line represent logical flow of operational data or sequencing of activity. So we process the customer order. After that, we will allocate inventory to a committed order. We'll ship the order and bill the customer, and eventually we'll receive the payment from the customer. And when we ship the order, the shipping notice or shipping slip will be sent to the customer. The shipping notification will be sent to the warehouse for them to pack and ship the order. The billing to the customer will be handled by the account receivable. The dotted line here imply that the actual information flow is really occurring between the activity supported by an information system and the underlying, usually a centralized database. So when the customer call and try to place an order, the order entry clerk will basically enter that data into the database. And people who manage the inventory will actually go to the database, find out those newly entered order, and decide how to allocate the inventory to such order based on what we have in the warehouse. Same thing happened for those dotted line here. The account payable, instead of going to the shipping department to find out what has been shipped, they are going to use the data in the database to find out the status of the order which has been shipped but not billed, in order to prepare the invoice to be sent to the customer. The thick arrow-headed line here represent the material flow, the goods that's shipped to the customer, and this thick dotted arrow-headed line imply a money flow. The payment by the customer to us, received by the accounts receivable, is the money flow. So there are different type of flow. The material flow, the logical sequence of activity, like here, the actual information flow, in this case, the information system we use to support the business process, and the backend database, and eventually the material flow and the money flow. Usually we're more interested in the workflow here. In some situation, we'll be very interesting in the information flow and try to capture that in our model. The following is a standard set of flowchart symbol for system flowchart. The industrial engineer usually use this to depict a business process. The commonly used one are rectangle for activity, the symbol for delay. This is actually movement, transportation, and the decision point is represented by this symbol. This is a connector, usually connect a diagram in one page to another page. Beginning and end of a process can be represented by this symbol. Sometimes we do show the documents or forms used in a workflow with this symbol. The arrow represents the direction of the process flow. So this is an example of what we refer to as a cross-functional flowchart that we will use for process mapping. And this indicates customer initiate process by placing the order. Customer service department will enter the order into this assistant. The credit checking department will check credit, which is a decision. The result can be approve or deny. If it's approved, then we'll process this order by updating its inventory and send a notification to the shipping department, waiting for the shipping department to pick the order and ship it out. Once it's shipped out, the order, the product will be received by the customer. That will indicate the end of this process. We on the top here are different entity, organization unit that are involved in this business process. The divider are dividing the whole business process into different band, B-A-N-D, or swim lane if we use the UML activity diagram terminology to indicate who may be in charge of certain activity within this process. Additional information can be collected. Here we just give each activity a number, a sequence number to identify it. We can also estimate the processing time and the cycle time of each of the activity. And when there's a big gap between processing time and cycle time, then we know there's a lot of room for improvement. Last but not the least, this is an example of what usually referred to as a service blueprint used for service improvement, service process modeling. And here the rectangle has been used to represent activity in most of the case. And the important thing is that the dividing line, for instance, above this dividing line, they are customers' action. Below this line of interaction, the first segment here represent so-called front stage or on stage activity that are visible to the frontline worker, our employee. Below this line of visibility are the backstage activity, which are invisible to our customer. And also there's a line of internal interaction. Below this line usually represent the kind of systems or supporting process that will be used. And in service design, we certainly want to pay extra attention to the activity performed by the frontline worker. In this modeling, what's unique about it is we also try to identify the action or activity which from the customer's perspective. In addition to the customer action, another thing in the service blueprint which has been captured in this diagram are so-called physical evidence. For instance, the facility and the look and feel. For instance, in the dining service, in-room dining service, the menu will be the artifact or the physical evidence that may affect the user's experience. So this concludes our discussion of business process modeling, process mapping. Thank you.